Oh, look at that. Good morning, Kiri Bear. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Gerald. How are you?
I've noticed that you've got something on in the background and you just turned the music down. I heard it.
Yeah, I just got rid of it.
Nothing like making it all happen on the day. Hey, before we get started, I'm so interested in this conversation that we're about to have because I think this was something that I used to do years ago, using games or using some sort of design and then having a process where you could then debrief and maybe have a discussion about what we just saw within the game. So I want to get into that in a moment. Before I do, though, I did some research on you. I did. I found some stuff out about you, and I don't know if we should. Yeah, we should. Of course we should. Let's read this out. This is what I found. So all I did was typed in your name, and this came up. Let's read this together. Kiri. A Kiri is one of the best friends to have. She is kind and caring and loving and very smart, even if she sometimes acts goofy and impulsive. She's one of the nicest girls you'll ever meet at heart. She is tall and likes to play basketball and has lots of friends who love her for her. If you meet a Kiri, consider yourself extremely lucky, but get ready for lots of random poems and puns and some really good stories too, because Kiri loves to write. She will love you for who you are as long as you do the same.
Where did that even come from?
Hang on, let me take that off. What was that? Where did that
even come from?
If you go to Urban Dictionary.
Right.
Yeah, if you go to Urban Dictionary, and all I did was typed in Kiri, and then that came out. Don't worry, if you type in my name, it says something like I'm a horrible person. You know, you never want to be with a Gerald. A Gerald is always the clown of the room. But of course, Urban Dictionary is one of the best things. So that's what I got from Urban Dictionary. So I'm expecting a poem. I'm expecting some good stories. And a pun. So there's got to be a lot of those. Hopefully you've got some of that. Oh, what a good way to start, hey?
Fascinating.
So let's get into this little session that we have here, because I just want to get into the conversation. I love having conversations. Some people say, "Oh, I want to be interviewed," and I go, "It's not a job interview. You're not applying for a job here." So I just like to have a conversation. But I love the fact that I see that you've got Amble Studios, and you're I'm reading here, creative and director at Amble Studios. So who are you, and what is it that Amble Studios does?
Wow. I saw a careers counselor earlier this year, and she described me as an eclectic entrepreneurial sort. So I think that's a good way to catch it, because I have a lot of different interests.
Yeah.
Very kind of, I don't know, just passionate about life and passionate about lots of different things. I've worked in prevention of violence against women and family violence. I've done lots of work around nature connection, or like delved into like nature connection kind of stuff in my spare time. I play the ukulele and crochet, and and during lockdown, I started a board game company with some friends of mine.
So you did. So you did. Oh, so with a couple of friends of yours. So you didn't actually start up a poetry company, which is what you should have done. No.
I didn't. I think I've missed my calling.
I think you have. I want to go back a little bit. I just heard you say this, and I noticed this also on your LinkedIn profile, that you did some work with prevention of violence to women. Talk to me a little bit about what that was. You don't have to mention the organisation, but how did you get involved in that?
Well, I've been working in that field for almost 20 years. I first got into that by volunteering in a program that went into schools to talk to young women about respectful relationships and like letting them know what the warning signs are for abuse in relationships. And then the coordinator of that program left at short notice. I took over because I had just finished uni, and 15 years later, I was still working in that field.
So 15 years in the field, and you just started off as a volunteer. But what makes somebody say, like, I can get into a volunteering role myself, and then sometimes I think that's great. It was a nice little volunteer role, but so then you went into full-time work. Is that right? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kept me in that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm passionate about. Passionate about social change, about transformation, about looking at how we live as a society and thinking about, like, is that really working for us? And how could it work better? How could it work better for more people? How could we, build cultures and communities that support us to flourish?
Yeah. Because I think the old adage is that, you have a community that raises a child. And I think I'm freezing up here a little bit on my camera. You can still hear me. What I might do is that I might just see if I can change. The wonders of technology. Always wants to play. Let me just see if that works. Yeah, hang on. Let me see if... Here we go. I think I'm back in. If I freeze up again, we'll just keep talking, because I think that's what happens with internet. So I guess then, like I said, you kind of like find out that, yeah, if you can raise a child through a community, there's got to be better ways of doing it. And I think, yeah, something's going terribly wrong. I don't think we're doing this right. I don't know what's happening. But why did you start Amble Studios? And I think you said you started Amble Studios because of lockdown. So talk to me through how that all of a sudden got some traction.
I had been playing Dungeons and Dragons for about 4 years with my friend Hayley Cooper Ryder and some other folks. And Hayley had a background at CollabForge, so working specifically on collaboration. And one of the things that she had really noticed was that when folks play role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, and other indie role-playing games, that they naturally express the skills that we need for good collaboration. And so, I'm interested in how can we work better as a society? How can we create more of the conditions for all of us to flourish? Being aware of, discrimination and inequalities of the past. And here's Hayley like, yeah, I wanna start a company to really teach people about how to work better together using the power of games. And the beautiful thing about games is that you can really design an experience that kind of does the learning for you. So you're not standing there telling someone like, you should think this, or this is the theory, and here's all the research of why you should believe what I'm saying. It's like, here, play this game, have an experience, and then we'll talk about what happened. So it's a fabulous way. Yeah.
Yeah, so you do a bit of a debrief afterwards. I'm going to change the screen onto this screen here. I think the camera's better on here, and I'm small, so I can stay in this little corner over here. So I'm guessing some of the games, and talk me through some of the games. I'm thinking when you say games, it'd be something like, okay, we can play Canasta, we can play Monopoly, we can play any one of those team or any board game that you're thinking. But I'm also thinking you may have designed some board games as well, the way you can do the debrief. So, but you're saying we play a game, we watch how each person interacts within that game, and then we do a debrief, and you say something like, I noticed Kiri had a lot to say, but Gerald seemed to be overtaking with his comments. Is that how it happens? So you really call the person out? Maybe not like that.
There's a few different ways it can happen. Like, it could be that, like noticing like this person talked a lot or this person talked less. Some of the ways that we design games. So one of our games, Green Hollow, is really focused on like teams and team building. And the idea is that you play it together and you're in this fictional town running a project together. And so afterwards you can talk about like that was like you or it wasn't like you. And people pick characters that are not themselves, which gives us this opportunity to talk about what was happening amongst the characters. And we can draw our own conclusions, or we can talk in the debrief about how that worked for us. But it's a way of kind of raising that awareness and building the empathy without necessarily kind of being like, oh, you did this or you did that, in that kind of blaming way.
Yeah. I'm looking at one of the comments that Logan has written up here. Logan Timmons had written, Gerald mentions Monopoly, and then Logan writes, Kiri flinches. is that? And then big cheesy grin. Is that a in joke? Did I miss something? Is this one of your pet hates or pet peeves? Why do people mention Monopoly? It's not about Monopoly.
It's not that I hate that people mention Monopoly. I have like a shelf full of board games in my house, and Monopoly is not on that shelf.
Oh, right.
I'm not fond of Monopoly.
Right.
But it's interesting in terms of, it really lives large in people's minds. Like not everyone has played Monopoly, but a lot of people have played Monopoly, and they have a really visceral reaction to it. I sometimes... Yeah, when people say, oh, you mean like Monopoly, I often respond by being like, well, actually, board games have changed a lot in the last, 15 or 20 years. The kind of board games that you find now, like there are collaborative games, there are, all sorts of different things, all sorts of different experiences that you can have through games.
Yeah, not Twister. So we're not talking anything. You can tell how old I am, Kiri, because the only games I know is in fact, I have a game down here. Hang on 1 second. Hang on. Just took my helmet off. I got this game given to me by a very good friend of mine. And I'll put it up here. Can you see that? It's
Operation.
It's Operation. So is this the sort of game that we could be playing? I haven't opened the box, by the way. Let me just see if I... Oh, gosh, take that off. Sorry. I haven't opened the box, by the way, but you can see it's still locked in here. So that's not the game we're talking about, is it?
Not the game we're talking about.
So give me an example of some of the games, and maybe even tell me, how do you come up with a design? So what's the concept? So you sit down and you just go, okay, we need to have some sort of collaboration where we can find out different personalities, we can find out maybe different people's styles in communicating. How do you even start by coming up with a game like that?
Well, I mean, over the last 3 years, we've really been developing our practice around this. And so I think a really good example is the adaptation game.
Yeah.
So the adaptation game is about responding to climate change, knowing that that climate change is happening, that there's going to be impacts of climate change over the next, 10 or so years at least and more, and helping people to, create a story and kind of travel into the future to understand how those, big weather events might affect them and what sorts of things they can do to increase their resilience, to be able to deal with those things as they happen. And so where we started with that game, like there was the inspiration. So Ben Petterick came to us and was like, I really want, by various means, got connected with us, was like, I really want to design, I really think it's a game. I want people to have this conversation about climate change adaptation. And I think a game will be a way that will engage people to be able to do this. And then, Amber got together and we had Marybeck as a council, as a location, a partner, in terms of where we were going to start off by kind of developing this game and running this game. And then we're thinking about, like, what's the experience that we want people to have? What is it we want them to walk away with? Like, what's the outcome that we're looking for? And really, like, talking with our partners. So we found that co-design is a really crucial way to create a game. Like, we can use all of our understanding of design and the learning outcomes and that kind of thing, but being able to, like, talk with the audience and have them involved in what this game will look like and how to engage them in it is really crucial.
So when you say get them involved, how do they actually get involved? So I'm thinking about, you're going to go in an organisation, and let's just say, what are the numbers that we're talking about? Are we talking big like 20 plus teams, or we got teams of 4? I mean, walk me through, if I'm thinking here as a customer, and I'm going, well, I might have a team of 20 people, and you go, look, that's too many. Or I've got 150 people. Or you might come into a council, and a council has 4,000 staff. Like, do you break that sort of down into smaller units? How does that work?
Well, I guess like the way that it's working with the adaptation game is that that's ultimately will kind of roll out to the general community. But where we've started is just working with a smaller group. So we've run it. The game has sort of 4 players plus a facilitator. But what we've done is like run it in a room where there's 4 or 5 tables happening at the same time. And where we're hoping to get to is that we'll be able to send that package, like the package of the game, out into community with facilitators, and then they'll just be able to run it, at kitchen tables. That's the kind of end point. But where we've started is, running it with, 20 people in a room, playing concurrently, and taking feedback from them, integrating it, iterating the design, coming up with the next version. Running it again with a different group, running it with different community leaders, like getting that input and constantly, play testing, iterating. That's so the design process.
Give me a couple of names of the games that you have. So, I'm looking at your website or your brochure or something, and I see a name of a game. What would be some of the names that you have?
So we've got Green Hollow on there. That's a team building game. Also, Office Heroes is another team building game that we've created. That's much more a storytelling game.
Just go back to Office Hero. So what does that mean? What are we talking in there? That's a person who may have done something over and above the duty that they're involved in.
Office Heroes is kind of it's a playful game, and the story is that you're just at work having an ordinary day, and this mysterious cloud comes past, and suddenly the photocopiers come to life, and you need to kind of battle it out with the photocopier. But you've also got you and your colleagues have these random kind of office superpowers. Like you can suddenly spring casters out of your feet and wheel around the office, or you can shoot paper clips.
I'd love that. I want to shoot paper clips. That's what I want to do. I would have been one of those ones. I want to shoot the paper clip. So they come up with their own superpower. Is that what it is?
I think we offer them kind of superpowers. Always with these games, there's kind of a balance. Like in terms of the design of a game, you want to give people enough kind of play equipment that they feel like it sparks their imagination and they can come up with different ideas. But you don't want to overwhelm them and just be like, it can only be this way, and then they get nervous about the rules. So you want it to be kind of open and imaginative and like, yes, you can think of anything, all your ideas are welcome. But if you give someone a totally blank page, they just kind of like, I don't know what to write.
Yeah,
I don't
true.
know what to do.
Yeah, true. So who's your audience?
It's for different games. We have different audiences. So for the adaptation game, the audience is kind of the general community. There's another game we're working on that's about leadership. That's really for pitched at like senior leaders within organizations and managers particularly. There's another game that we worked on that was for job seekers, that were for folks who like needed to learn job skills.
I was at an expo a couple of weeks ago. I think about a month ago, and there was a stand, and one of the stands was an engineering firm, but what they came up with was using massive scale engineering techniques, but dumbing it down so that kids could be able to, turn a wheel, turn a cog, and then that would make the mousetrap run or something. But it would be, I'm going to introduce you to engineering, but as a third grader or a fourth grader. Because if we try to teach kids engineering as a third and fourth grader, it'd be like logarithms, sine, cos, tan. I don't know what you're talking about. So if I'm thinking about your game, how would someone utilize your game for future? So for future learning, and what would they walk away with?
So for future,
Yeah, so what I'm probably trying to say there is that they're going to use your game, and then they look at your game and they say, you know what, I want to be able to utilize that game there, and then be able to inspire my team that because of this activity that we did, it's really brought out some really positive values in some people. So when I say future learning or for future, is that you don't just play the game and then all of a sudden, thanks very much, guys, we'll see you next week, and hopefully we'll see you in a couple of years' time. It's the transfer of the learning into the workplace. How does that work?
I think there's a few things that that our games do. Like building empathy, definitely, is a thing. So being better able to understand the mind of the other, which is a real crucial skill in collaboration as well.
Can you give it? I like the word empathy. You know, I think sometimes we miss the word empathy. How do you do that in a game though? Like I'm just trying to think. I mean, how do you do that in a game?
Well, it depends on the game and how the game's designed, but by giving people a role to play, and potentially if you keep playing the game, you can experiment with playing different roles, like kind of putting on different characters. And in doing that, you discover things about yourself. You discover things about that character. I often see in role-playing games this beautiful thing that happens where someone starts out being like, I'm going to play this character that's completely different from myself. I'm going to give myself this refreshing thing. But then as they're like making up the stories, inevitably they kind of draw on their own experience. And that means that they find these points of connection. It's like, I set out to be different, but I discover actually I'm still here, but from a different perspective.
It's interesting you say that. Do you remember? I love role playing and I love putting people in different positions. Do you remember the prison experiment? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yes. So you could see how that kind of role playing game. We're going to split the room up in half. We're going to have you're going to dress in prison and warden, or you're going to wear the prison stripes, and you over here you're going to be wearing the warden's outfit. And I think they even made a movie out of it. That's on Netflix at the moment. It's based on the prison experiment. Now, tell me that your games are 100% safe, that nothing like the prison experiment will happen, where they wanted to do this experiment and lasted over maybe 2 weeks, but I think they had to shut it down in 4 days because people they took on the role so authentically that they truly believed that I was the prisoner or I was the warden and play that role. So I know your answer is yes, our games are safe, but how safe? Like how?
Well, I can tell you about some of the tools that we have, because I mean, one of the things is like we do want people to feel things when they play. Like that's part of the experience, that's part of the engagement. But we also want people to feel like they can stop what's happening at any time. So one of the things we have is like a pause card. So at any moment, if the material's getting too difficult for someone, or even if they're just confused or they have a question, they can hit that pause card and they can either choose to like rewind and recreate the story to something that works better for them, or they can just say, I want to stop that there. I don't want to talk about it, and just change the subject. So yeah, we give people those kind of tools and options at the outset.
But I guess even somebody holding up a pause card, even that must tell you a little bit about that person's personality. That must tell you that this person maybe needs to do a little bit of resilience training, or they might have to do a little bit of more understanding how conflict works. That conflict isn't always bad, but conflict can actually help move the team in a certain direction. So does that give them an easy out? Like, I'm uncomfortable, I don't want to play this anymore, I'm holding up the pause card? Or do you debrief that and then ask, hey, Gerald, we noticed that at the 20-minute mark you held up the pause card. Talk to me what happened through that. Is that the sort of thing that you do in the debrief?
I wouldn't necessarily debrief it, Gerald.
Okay.
Because of my background in preventing violence against women, I know that, like 1 in 5 women, 1 in 20 men have a have an experience of sexual assault, and they can be triggered by all sorts of things, and I don't want to ask them to explain that.
Okay.
There's still plenty of richness in the experience, plenty of things to talk about without having to, go back into those particular moments in detail.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense to me. You don't want to trigger a person to bring up a horrible memory that they've had because I've decided, hey, I want to see what you're really feeling about this. But I think I read somewhere on your website it was about bringing up the feelings that people have through using a game. So how do you navigate through that then? So you now notice that Gerald is the one that held up the pause card. Do you raise the, and I'm trying to be delicate with this one here, because if we just go, Gerald held the pause card up, that's just his personality, we'll just leave him, he'll sort it out one day. But isn't there a part of us that sometimes think how we build resilience is by letting a person now know in a safe way that, hey, I realise that this might have been distressing for you. Do you want to talk about this? Is there something that you wanted to raise? So my question is here is that how do you navigate through that to make it safe rather than just going, right, pause card is up. We'll let him or her be in his or her safe space.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, Jared. And I think I can't necessarily point to how we're doing this in games, but I might circle back to that. But what is really coming alive for me is my work in prevention of violence against women. Because anytime you talk about violence against women, you've got to expect that there's people in the room that have personal experience of that topic, and that there are people who have never heard about it. And it's regularly, when I've run training in that space, people are regularly shocked and get quite emotional about that topic. And one of the things I say right up front is you are going to feel things and you are going to be uncomfortable. And that's really welcome. And in particular, there was an exercise that I used to run as part of bystander training with uni students, where it was like an imaginative journey where I was asking them to consider that, that they had themselves been sexually assaulted. And so what I did to make that safe was to be really clear. I'm inviting you to come on this imaginative journey. You can get off at any time. You can stop participating at any time. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify yourself. You can just stop. It's a written activity. So you can just stop at any time.
Yeah.
But I encourage you to do this activity because it is really important to build empathy and to understand what it might be like for someone with a lived experience of sexual assault to move through the world after that experience. And a world that's often really hostile to folks who have experienced sexual assault. If you think about the kind of jokes that people make and that sort of thing. I think having a clear purpose is a really crucial thing. So saying to people yes, I am going to make you feel uncomfortable, so they know up front that's going to happen, but this is why. And this is the kind of learning that you're going to get out of this, and it's worth it.
Do you feel sometimes that they may blame you for their reaction to certain situations? I don't know if blame is the right word, but I came into this workshop, I was hoping that this was going to be a great little safe space. We're going to play some games, or I wanted to be listening to someone with some lived experience in this, and now I'm walking out because this person in front of me who's supposed to keep it all safe has now raised some issues and has triggered me, and I'm feeling like he or she has, I don't know, maybe I think you know where I'm coming from.
Absolutely. And I think, it's obviously going to be familiar to you in terms of what you were talking about before, your work in Deescalation, but just listening to them and just saying yes, you're having this reaction and this is how you feel. And even just telling someone I can hear that this is how you feel and it's okay that you feel that way. And I'm okay with you feeling that way. Yes, you're really angry about this. I'm really angry about this too. This topic also is something that I feel really passionate about.
I think exactly what you're saying is that one of the techniques that we use is that serious acknowledgement. Look, I get where you're coming from. obviously has triggered you in some way, or this has brought up some memories in other ways, and then you reflect back. You say, so what I hear you were saying is that you've been in a situation where this has affected you, and by no means was that a purpose of ours. And so then you go into the conversation that happens there, and I think having a safe space for that really lets people to be free with speaking to you openly without being guarded. Because if I can reflect back on some of the sessions that I've done, now you've got to imagine that some of the sessions that I would do, they may be to correctional centres, they might be to policing, they may be to council workers, and we get all sorts of different types. But I can always notice that there are some people in there that would be a little bit guarded, and they don't open up. What would be a technique? So I'm going to ask you for advice now. What would be a technique for someone like me who's pretty hardened? And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I'm hardened to, it's water off a duck's back with a lot of things that would happen to me. Somebody calls me a name, I'll just go, okay, it's not my issue, it's their issue, but okay. Other people will say, how dare you call me that name? So what would be a better technique for me rather than say, oh, come on, get up, brush yourself off, get on with it? Not that I do that, but what would be a better technique that somebody could use where they are the sort of person that says, you know what, we've all got to work in this team, and my feelings or your feelings isn't going to help us move forward in this organisation? Because empathy is the word that you're using, and I want to hear more about this empathy.
I think there's often a perception that if someone's feeling something or having a reaction, that's a blocker or an obstacle to overcome. But I think often there's a lot of wisdom in what people are feeling. And so, giving just the gentle curiosity. Like, I notice you're having some feelings there. Would you like to talk about that?
I think that's really important. I think where I'm heading down towards too is that has it changed in the time when you first started this with the your work in domestic violence for women? Have we got better as a society to be more empathetic, or do you think that because of the way that the world is going with with climate change and the way that the world is just working, I mean, I can come up to 100 little different markers in our time, that since COVID people have got a little bit more, right, I'm losing control. I haven't got work. I can't afford the rent. The electricity bill's gone up. We're getting rid of the Commonwealth Games. How are we going to pay for the Olympic Games? What's going to happen? And all I want to do is I just want to go to work and do my work. Have we as a society become a little more empathetic to people, or have we just gone, I'm selfish, I don't care about who you are, I've got myself to look after?
Gosh, that's a hard one. Honestly, I think some people have gone in one direction and some people have gone in the other. So there's maybe a bit more polarization or something. But I think, that shared experience of the lockdown, certainly in Melbourne, did create a lot more empathy and a lot more willingness to acknowledge, there's things going on. We need to slow down a little bit. We need to make a bit more time for each other. But at the same time, there's some sectors that really sped up and, became even more frenetic.
I think I heard you just say that the lockdown in Melbourne, because that must have been a horrible time. That's where you are in Melbourne. In Queensland, we didn't suffer as bad. We would have had 2 and 3 day lockdowns. I think our longest was about a week. But do you think there was not only a sense of empathy for some people, but there was anger? Some people really had anger around how they could just quite easily be locked down, shut down, forgot about, regardless of what happens, and other people have had that empathy. What's your experience? Do you see more anger or do you see more empathy? Sorry to put you on the spot like this, because I just want a really open conversation, because I think where I'm coming from is I see a lot of anger. I'd like people to have a lot more empathy, And I wonder, like what's happened up here in Queensland, or just in an area where I am, we've had people go into libraries and be increasingly abusive, because of books that are displayed in the library. There's young children from a certain school that are just having outright fights at schools because they're so angry. And I wonder what's attributed to that. There must be something, must be a marker somewhere that says what's happening that we should be as adults. And Kiri, you're an intelligent person. I can hear it in your voice and I can see it in the expressions that you give me, that you are really passionate about what you talk about. But why haven't we grasped this idea of being a little bit more empathetic and compassionate to people's needs?
Oh, I think anger is a tricky one because, in my view, anger is kind of a spectrum, yeah? And when it's at that point where someone's kind of exploding, that's a high level of anger.
That's rage,
but
yes.
That's rage. But when you're tuned in to anger in yourself and what it's telling you, and you're able to respond to a low level of anger, it might just be like, no, I don't want to do that. Or yes, I do want to do this.
Yeah.
So it's like this motivation and setting boundaries and clarity. Anger also has all of that. So it's often painted as this really, negative emotion. But that's because we're not taught how to manage ourselves at those lower levels and given space to express and I guess, be regulated.
Yeah.
Around our anger.
Do you get angry? Do you get angry?
Absolutely.
Because people who ask that question, they say, no, I don't get angry. And I go, and my normal response to a person who's very calm and doesn't get angry, my normal response is, you're probably the person that everyone gets angry at, is because you're so calm and they don't show any emotion. It's like, no, I'm sitting on a rock and I'm talking to Zen, I'm looking out at the ocean. It's like, can we talk about some things? I'm generalizing here, but I think when I ask you, do you get angry? Obviously, there are some trigger points that makes you get angry. What would those be? What are a trigger point when somebody talks to you?
I had someone tell me that I was selfish the other day. That was a kind of a trigger point.
Selfish.
And I was just like, no, I don't want to have this conversation right now.
Yeah.
And I left.
Yes, selfish. See, it's amazing how some people will see whatever it is that you do. I don't know. You want some time off. You want to play. You want a game, or you want to go and do some Dungeons and Dragons. I love that. I want to hear more about that. I want to do that. This is my time. And they go, well, you're just selfish. And you go, actually, not selfish. Just feel like I want to do this on my own time.
And I think the thing is, when someone says that you're selfish, what they're saying is you're putting your needs above my needs. And so
maybe they're projecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, who is selfish in that scenario? It's not like there's one kind of, this
higher
is what
being.
It takes to be a good person. It's always contested. So it's a bit of a.
So how did they take it when you said, look, thanks very much for your contribution to this discussion, but I don't want to be a part of this. So I know you didn't say that, but you said, I don't want to talk about this, and you just walked away, didn't you? Or you just said, I don't want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And how did they take that?
I had another conversation with that person since then, and where we were more able to listen to each other and hear about the kind of days that we had both had that day, and neither of us was in a particularly good place. So,
and I think that's important. I think sometimes if you can come back, some of the leadership things I used to talk about when I was doing leadership workshops was, it's not so much having the conflict and the anger or the disappointment with the staff member on the day. It's about day two. It's about saying, hey, yesterday we seem to have got off on the wrong foot. That wasn't my intention. Are we okay? Can we go and have a coffee somewhere? Can we just have a chat about what happened yesterday? I don't think I was in the right frame of mind. I don't know where you were, but I want to apologise from my point that I think I overstepped the mark. I think what I call the day two, or coming back later when we've both relaxed and then approach the situation, is a hell of a lot better.
This is also what we do with our games, right? So we create a game, we play it with people, they have an experience, and then we have the debrief. Then we have the conversation about, like, the meta conversation, like what just happened in that game. And so even taking people through that process is kind of also, teaching them or giving them an experience of, like, we do a thing together, stuff happens, and then we talk about what happened. Kind of giving people more language and more familiarity in those kinds of meta conversations, talking about what we did and why.
And I'm guessing that's the safe part of the game, isn't it? That's the safe part, is that they can either participate or they can just go, look, thanks very much, I'll move on to the next person, I'm good with this. I mean, that's called assertive communication, and one of the things that we talk about is that tactical assertive communication. It is a tactic. You have to be assertive, but it just also means that my needs aren't above your needs and your needs aren't above my needs, but we both have these both needs that need to be met, I guess, in a way like that. So where do you think this business of yours could really end up going in the next, say, 5 years? So what's your vision? Where do you see it going?
Well, what we're discovering is, like, the bit that we're really good at is, like, designing that experience and really bringing it to life. And where it works best is when we're in partnership with someone who has that kind of ongoing relationship with an audience. So we set them up with, like, a really awesome tool that they can then use to generate the learning that they want.
Yeah.
And so, like, where I would like to see us in 5 years is that we've kind of got a stable of various kind of transformative learning interventions, games, that are out there kind of doing their work in different sectors and really, like, shifting people's conversations about diversity and inclusion and climate change and human flourishing that is not coming at the expense of people or planet.
So some of your clients would be totally those people who are on board to some of the topics that you mentioned about, diversity and inclusion and climate change and whatever else is happening in the world out there. But what if you get a client who turns around and says, nah, we're not into all that sort of stuff. Nah, that's not what we do. We're just an organisation that, needs to get on with it. How do you talk around that person who's steadfast in their boots? They're not going to shift, they're not going to change, but that you've got the panacea to make some really important shifting change in that business?
Well, one of the games that we're working on is a leadership game, as I mentioned. That's not it's not got so many of those kind of, touchy-feely topics in it, but it is still giving people an experience of collaboration. It's still giving people, it's kind of like a simulation of a work environment, but really demonstrating how important it is to build capacity and to work together, to collaborate, because everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. So with someone like that, putting on my social change hat, we talk about this notion of the movable middle. So if someone's, like, really against what you're doing or isn't interested in what you're doing, then they're not really your audience.
Yeah.
But, if this person was kind of curious, then I'd play some games with them. I would get them across the line by giving them the experience for themselves, and finding out, what came alive in them during that experience, and what might this mean for their audience, or how might this solve a problem for them.
I actually love that process. The word that you used in there, which triggered my interest, was the word curiosity. Sometimes a person who's so steadfast and doesn't want to shift the needle, and it's like, this is what I've been like all my life, and I've been brought up like this, and my father told me to take a cup of cement and harden up. So I'm down that track with them, and it's like, you don't have to be that aggressive and that hard. You can actually soften up a bit, and you might find that you get some really different outcomes, and you might get some different benefits from exploring that. But it is hard to make that change in some people. I know when I do some of my sessions, I get the person that sits there with their arms folded like that, and they go, I've done this before, mate. You know, you can't teach me anything. And they're the people that you think, okay, it's not about me teaching them anything. It's about them exploring that they can maybe give an aha moment. You know, like, oh, okay, all right, all right. But they won't admit it. You know, they won't admit that they learnt some things because that armour it's just been shattered. So of course they stay into that.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the top. We've gone already 45 minutes. Incredible how much time flies when you're doing this. And I noticed just on the one side to you, I don't know which side. Just point that way, Kiri. Point that way. I think. The other side. That way. That's it. No, the other one. No, the games for facilitators. That's on that side.
Game design for facilitators.
Game design. What is that?
One of the things that Amble has developed over the years is a training course for other people who want to learn some of these game design skills, so that you can create a game. For a training. Yes, absolutely. So you can come along to this, and we teach you how to create a story game, a little role-playing game, to help you with your learning objectives in whatever training you're running.
Now that I would be interested. See, that I would be interested. So I would just get my phone and I would just get the QR code. It says sign up via the QR code. And then what happens there? I'm not going to do it now, but what happens? It takes me to the world of...
It takes you to the humanities page.
Yes.
That will tell you a bit more about that training and all the dates and times and that kind of thing.
Well, I think you're going to see maybe a new member who's going to be maybe clicking on that little link there. And I'd love to learn maybe some different ways, because, you know, as a facilitator myself, a speaker, you get bogged down in the process of what you've been using over the last 150 years, and then this might spark another interest. And so I think this would be great. And I know there would be a few facilitators who'd be watching this who'd be thinking, I could do with something different. Now, before I let you go, you have to give me a poem. Sorry. It's you have to. This is who you are. Apparently, I've read Kiri, what Kiri's all about. I'm not letting you go until you come up with a poem. Ready? And I'm waiting.
A poem that I've written, or a poem that...
Well, it says you're a creative writer. From what I saw in the description, it said, you know, Kiri is the person who would love to give you stories, which you've done, puns. You haven't given me a pun, so I'll let you off with that. But said would love to give you a poem. So I'm waiting for this while my screen's frozen again. Those little gremlins in there. So please, we are all waiting for your poem when you're ready. I'm ready.
Nerves rising, creativity swells, stepping into the unknown. Who knows what's next?
Thank you. I'm going to cherish that. I'm going to be using that, and I'm going to be saying this is a poem that you have written for me. Thank you. Have you had fun?
Yes, I have.
It's been a bit of fun on here. I tell you, it's not meant to be too serious, but I'm so glad. Hang on, Logan's just written something here. It's got, well done, Kiri, haha, quite on the spot.
Someone else suggested that if I read out the description of you, that would make a good point.
Oh, is that right? Did somebody... I can't see that comment there. Maybe you should. Actually, quickly, why don't you go into... while I've got you there, we've got a couple of minutes while I unfreeze my frame again. Just jump on the net and type in Urban Dictionary. We'll see how we go there. Type in Urban Dictionary. And then in the search bar, if you can type in Gerald. Just Gerald will do. And then let's see how we go.
Cool, sweet, fun, lovable guy who always seems to be misunderstood. He can be romantic as well. Guys like these are hard to find because they're great to have around. Not only they are smart, like a nerd, but they have looks like a model. Typical Gerald would be found on a computer or phone in a chat room or just online playing video games. Wow, I've never met a guy like him before. He must be a Gerald.
He must be a Gerald. That's so funny. You're going to do that with your whole office now, aren't you? You're going to type in everyone's first name and you're going to go back and go, here you go. Let's play this game. This is I want to see the reaction that you have. Oh, Kiri, it's been too much fun. Too much fun. I want to thank you for taking the time out. I'm sorry about the screen freezing, but, you know, the internet bugs will get you every now and then. But thank you so much for the 45, 50 minutes. This is one of the funnest ones. Is that a word? Funnest ones? One of the funnest ones that I've had for a long time. Sorry for everyone else that's watching. They're going, I was fun. Okay, no, you weren't. Kiri was the most fun.
Gerald.
All right, well, I will talk to you again somewhere, and I'll see you probably on the lounge with Kiri in the next week or so. But adios. And for anyone that wants to join me, here it is here. If you want to join me, let's talk about whatever with whomever. You send me your picture, you send me who you are, and we can talk about anything that you like, just like Kiri. And you might even, I don't know, write me a poem, something cute. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Kiri. Bye-bye.
Bye.